Hi, everyone. This is Jacqui Cooper with JCooperTravels, and I want to welcome everyone to this episode. I am really excited to have my guests on because they span the globe. I have a guest from South Africa, as well as a guest who happens to be in the United States, and I'll be introducing them in a quick second. We are going to be talking about something that's close to my heart. It's all about how do we protect the environment and how do we save money and how do we do it in a way that helps others. I wanted to share a little bit about JCooperTravels in case you're new to the show. I started this a few years ago. I am a certified travel consultant and I love going around the world and meeting new people and learning about new cultures. And so I wanted to have JCooperTravels share the vision of how small a community we are, as well as explore new places so we can all learn and have fun together. And then COVID happened, so I rebranded it. And so now it's about how do we travel in life? That includes where do we go, but it's also how do we treat each other? How do we treat ourselves? And what is everyone's story? And I've been meeting wonderful, remarkable people on my social media networks, and I love having them share their stories because these stories can both inspire and educate, as well as help. So today, oh, the other thing I forgot, my background. So I am an attorney, but I'm also an entrepreneur and I'm also an educator. So that kind of gives you an idea as to how I have kind of arrived at blending all these different topics into the talk show. But I also love following my passion and having fun. So today we are going to be talking about something that I think is fun for everyone, and that's being out in the sun. And then how do we use the energy of the sun to help us in a productive way. So with that, I'm going to hop over to my guests, Rand and Randy. How are you doing today?
Very well.
Doing well.
So I'm going to have each of you introduce yourselves, in a little way to explain both your own personal story, as well as what this project is that we are going to be sharing today. Because I know that I connected with Rand, maybe about 18 months ago, and you were in Asia at that point, I believe, and you've traveled around the world, and now you're in South Africa. Randy, I have connected with here on the internet, and again, it's amazing that we can be talking in all parts of the world and sharing information. So Rand, why don't you go ahead and explain a little bit about your background and the project, and then we'll hop over to Randy.
Okay, perfect. So again, my name is Rand, and I was living in Manila when we connected up, Jacqui and I, and we lived there for 10 years. My wife and I, we have 4 kids. We ended up there because our father had a greeting card gift item business in Europe, and we were managing the office over there in the Philippines because they're a very artistic culture. And that was great. We ended up staying. We meant to do it for a year, just kind of take the load off because he was traveling back and forth from Germany, and we loved it. We stayed there and we enjoyed the expat life because there's a lot of advantages. And I always, you kind of keep your, I'm entrepreneurial as well. And I thought it just a better quality of life. You'd have to live halfway across the world. The time zones are awkward, but you could have a lot more of life while still pursuing your pursuits without having to kind of go off and do things to make ends meet as much. So that became my life strategy, different quality of life, exotic, it was fun. We moved to South Africa recently. We love it here. It's just a little more freedom and it was more open. It was time for a change. Manila had a lot of lockdowns and the kids didn't have a lot of mobility. So we came here. My background's in wastewater treatment for the most part, clean tech, as they say. So I really have a love of 2 things, technology, and as it is applied to make the environment better, but in such a way that actually cuts costs, right? So it's economical at the same time. So I like that marriage of the 2. Just asserting to have things for better for the environment, but not being realistic about the cost factors didn't seem very productive to me. So that's kind of where I live. As that evolved, I looked at things that were growth markets. Solar became one of them, because I thought, I really became interested in having a decentralized approach where you could actually have power production on the house. I think it's a lot more efficient. And I saw the value was really unusual to the homeowner. And it kind of it fit into that pocket that I really liked. So I got involved with solar. My wife got involved as well. She connected with Randy because Randy, a part of what we're doing is as a mentor in this network. Very well spoken, very articulate, knows the history, knows the ins and outs, business strategies, finding ways to communicate, connect with people. He's excellent at that. And him and I kind of hit up a kinship and we partnered up together. And then that kind of turned into this with Jacqui. And we thought because some illuminating aspects on how solar can be a life hack and just talk about our experience. And yeah, so that's my background, where I live. If you have any questions, reach out, places to go, and how I got into what I'm doing now and how Randy and I connected. And that's
So
my story.
Randy, what is the why, how you became involved with the solar project, and also what's your background as well?
Sure. So thank you for having me.
Mm-hmm.
I started out as an investment banker. I was in the industry for about 25 years. I retired from the industry. In doing so, I had a lot of experience in natural resources, what came out of the ground, understanding it. And in that capacity, I wanted to make a really great impact on my children. Like Rand, I also share with 4 children. My wife and I have them. And, you know, as they got older, I realized, you know what? I want to leave this place a much better place than the way that I got it. And it brought me into the real passion of what I found to be my life. You know, I really wanted to go after it from a different perspective. I grew up in the US. I live in New Jersey. I live in Connecticut. And being in the financial industry created a lot of money for a lot of big businesses. Wouldn't it be amazing to understand this life hack that Rand discussed in a way that we have an opportunity to convert in one of the largest expenses that a homeowner has into something that is really an asset? And when we have the opportunity of learning about these things, because I'm a big believer in education too, you know, education can be never taken away from you. And if you have that opportunity to teach somebody in this industry, or for that matter, as I do each morning, I teach every morning for an hour, giving away my time to make sure that the professional end of a solar professional is really putting ourselves in a very high professional regard, rather than just being a salesperson. Consultatively speaking is where my experience comes from. As we do as parents, you know, we consult our children and we try and make the right decisions for everybody. But the evolution of life is something that transpired. And understanding that the evolution of energy and realizing that we have for the biggest expenses in our life, when we own a home, we make that choice. Most people have a mortgage. Most people have taxes they have to pay. Most people also have the maintenance on a property that they have to pay. But the 4th largest expense for anybody that owns a home today is a utility expense. By eliminating that utility expense, really understanding it, and taking that energy cost and putting it back into your own pocket, to me is a great way of sitting on the same side of the table, as opposed to across the table advising somebody. And then really showing them that dynamic is what my why was all about, because I made a lot of people a lot of money in large businesses. It would be even more impressive to be able to do the same if we look at the United States as an audience. You have 130 million people in the United States today, where 90 million of them actually qualify for solar energy. 4 million people in the US today actually have it. There's only one way for this to go, up. And the world itself has this renewable energy component that brought Rand and I together as well in our backgrounds. And what also incorporated is, as we met in this journey of life that we call, shall we say, the renewable energy world, it's amazing to me how there's so many like-minded people in this world that really just don't have that knowledge. So on my end, to be able to do that is really my why.
So you mentioned the statistics of how many people could have solar and how many do have solar. Why do you think, first of all, why do you think that individuals might not have solar? And then let's talk about how people could take advantage of adding solar to their homes. And let's talk about the process, because maybe one of the barriers might be is that people don't know how easy, or they might think that there's other things that are more difficult, so they just don't pick up the phone and call. So why don't we talk about, all that part of it?
Perfect. Well,
Go ahead, Randy.
a lot of people just don't have the education behind it, right? Rand, did you want to answer it first?
No, go ahead. I think you're more suitable for this and the mechanics
All right.
of.
Most people just don't have the education of it. If we go back into time and we talk about evolution for just a second, Einstein, Edison, and Tesla actually created electricity, but at the same time, solar energy was created. And they realized a renewable energy form would actually be a safer place for us to generate electricity. However, that didn't happen because if we look in the United States for just a second, and that's the audience that I'm involved in for the most part, you can identify the fact that the government wants their tax revenue. And also big business wants to grow. So if you were to have that conversation with Westinghouse, who created, well, we know the name, Westinghouse, right? So you would have understood at that time it was much more profitable for the government to be in bed with Westinghouse than it would be for them to have created the actual solar panel. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. But what did happen is we realized that global warming took place. And this is really the most important component here. The evolution of understanding global warming is really that, it's really dangerous for the environment. We can eliminate that carbon dioxide component in the atmosphere as best as possible by no longer burning a fossil fuel. And the costs today are much more generously favorable to the consumer than they would have been a number of years ago. Costs have come down. It's much less expensive to own your own energy as opposing to renting your own energy from the electric company. And I choose my word carefully there. Everyone that's listening on this particular circumstance right now, we choose, if we're a homeowner, to actually not rent a property. In essence, you're not making somebody else wealthier, you're putting that money back into your own pocket. Your cost of living is part of your retirement, your value proposition financially. When you can eliminate the expense and become your own utility company by producing the energy on top of your roof, also known as solar energy, then you actually take all that carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. You utilize the energy that's made above your roof. And because the utility is designed in a way to actually have this net metering component, which Rand can certainly discuss a lot better in detail than I could, the idea here is that you have this opportunity of overproducing energy and sending it back to the utility grid, and then getting it back from the utility grid at, it could be a 1-to-1 ratio, or it could be different depending on states that you're in. Every state has a different type of net metering program, which we can certainly elaborate on a little bit further in this conversation, or people can do the research accordingly on what net metering is.
So,
Hope I answered your question.
so how would, if someone wanted to explore, if they've been curious about it, solar curious, but they just didn't know what to do, what are the steps to actually have a consultation and find out if this is a good fit for them? What would they do and how would they do that? I know also, everyone, there will be links below in the blog. So if you don't have paper and pen, whenever we mention something, just come back to the blog area and you'll be able to click on the link. But let's talk about the logistics, because we've heard that solar is good, but now what's next? How do we even explore that?
Jacqui, I'll step in on that. I think one thing was brought up to me recently that I think we don't often express well enough is that it's very, it takes, the whole entirety of the time is turning in a power bill, answering 15-20 minutes of questions, of understanding what your energy consumption is. Do you have an electric, are you planning to get an electric vehicle? What's your square footage of your house? Energy efficiencies. What's your breaker box look like? How many amps? How old is your roof? Questions to kind of understand the dynamics of your home and what you plan in the future will let us spec in and build the proper size system. That, combined with certain technology and aerial view software, allow us to look at the angles of your roof and really give you a very accurate prediction on what production you'll make. And then we'll do the research and contact your utility company and find the incentives and the rebates and put that together in a proposal that literally takes about an hour of your time. And at that point, if you wanted to check out as a homeowner, we'll be there for the site survey. which will confirm what was seen from aerial view and all the questions. You don't need to be there for the installation. So it seems like it's a big production, like a big home improvement renovation. And that's what I think people hear that and they think it's complicated. But what someone brought up yesterday, that literally if you wanted to be hands off, you could do 1 hour presentation, get all the details, get the confirmation of what you can produce, see the savings, because the simplicity of savings also is demystified is like this. You don't pay any money down. You take an existing power bill, say it's $200. You swap it for a lower solar payment. It literally is a bill swap. It's $190 and you freeze that rate in time for the next 25 years. In the face of inflation, the highest we've had in over 40 years, that's very significant. And when a homeowner shows up for that hour presentation and sees the compounding aspect of the savings every year, where at 7.2% right now, your power bill will double in 10 years. Statistically, average historically, it's every 17, 18 years. But right now, if it stays this way, who knows? We don't know which territory we're in. We just know it's very high inflation around the world, everywhere. So that's all. Just so it's a very simple value proposition of no money down. You take your existing bill, it goes away, and you replace it with a solar payment into something that you own, as Randy mentioned. That's the whole enchilada on that aspect. And the other aspect is the engagement of doing this thing is not putting in a new bathroom or kitchen. It's not putting in a new pool. It's not a month-long process with all these contractors at your house all the time. It really isn't. It's a very simple process. And I think that's not understood by most people. It's the estimation of effort or the perception of effort is much higher than it actually is.
So I have a question, because one of the things that you mentioned, I love the fact that it's no money down. And I also like the fact that you're fixing the rate over time. So that way you can, like a fixed mortgage, you can actually control your expenses. You mentioned that you don't need to be home. Don't you have to be home for the installation though?
You do. I'm going to jump in if you don't mind, Rand, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
So here's a little bit of a component that I want to elaborate on as well. There are steps that are needed inside this process for a homeowner to be home. Yes, you will have to make sure that somebody actually reviews your house prior to actually having something installed. Proper measurement needs to take place. There are some steps, but putting panels on top of somebody's roof, would you have to be home in order for that to happen? You're not actually on the roof at the time. Connecting it directly to your distribution panel in your utility space, yes, somebody should be around for it. Could you leave the garage open and go to work? Absolutely. But of course, that's going to be discussed between you and the installation team, which is on the ground. I do want to also, sorry, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I have a question though. And I know that the technology is changing, because when I looked into it a number of years ago, the panels were very heavy. They, things have evolved over time. Can you talk a little bit, and so a lot of people who might be listening to this might be like myself, where we looked into it and we're not aware of what the current status is. How are the panels attached to the roof? Are there different things that, technology wise, how has it changed and evolved?
It's a really great question. And I'm going to jump in on this too, Rand, for one reason, because different proximities of the world have different elements that are problematic. And I'm going to take a little bit of a moment to discuss that.
Yeah.
One, if you live on the Gulf Coast or on the East Coast, you're going to be subjected to hurricanes, tropical storms, different types of weather conditions that are going to preclude you from considering something like this. But I don't want to denounce that component for a variety of reasons. There are steps that have been taken. For example, there are hurricane-proof solar panels. They exist. And the proper racking systems are designed to be directly attached to your roof through the frame of the house. And that's done, connected correctly, and properly installed with the right installer. You have to do your proper evaluations on it. But in our circumstance, we've aligned ourselves correctly with the right dynamic here. Our teams actually have that in place. So we would specifically make sure that that homeowner on that proximity in the United States would have a hurricane-proof panel. There are certifications for it, wind certifications for it. Plus, there's different dynamics as well for something that you alluded to a moment ago, which is this value proposition financially. If you went back into time for just a second and you bared witness, for example, to somebody driving through a red light, and God forbid they got pulled over, for whatever the reasons may be, a police officer is going to pull them over and they're going to give them a ticket. What are they going to do? They're going to have to pay a fine. They did something wrong. But here in the circumstances, by doing something really great for the world, not only financially, but also environmentally, the government's going to reward you today, 2022. 26% of the total cost of your solar system is going to get returned to you for doing something that is great for the environment. Where again, if we went back into time for just a quick second, you had this particular moment where you're burning a fossil fuel, it's bad for the environment, and now you have this opportunity to really do something great and the government's going to reward you. Now, there are different state incentives, right? You live in Maryland, there's such a thing called solar renewable energy credits that a Maryland resident is going to get a true benefit in addition to somebody else that may live in Ohio, Kansas, New Jersey, Connecticut, California, Texas, wherever you are in the US, there's different incentives because different states realize that the utility grid is old. It's old. And when you talk about the impact of the financial considerations for families, you have a huge value proposition here. The value proposition is not just financially, but it's also environmentally. And that's this whole entire evolution component that is really just evolving. And you had also indicated, why would somebody be qualified, not be qualified in terms of a homeowner? I want to touch base on that for a second as well. If you have a shared roof and you share your home's roof as a townhome, the likelihood is you're going to need more panels on your roof to produce or offset all of the energy costs that you're currently incurring. And you're going to have to take over some of the ownership of that other roof space that is being shared. So that would disqualify you. Your other homeowners are going to allow you to get on their space of their roof in order to do this. I'm talking about single family homeowners, not so much where the shared component takes place for a roof. And that's one of the disqualification pieces. So I wanted to make sure that was discussed.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I know that there are many episodes that we're going to be talking about because today we're really doing an overview of what the possibility is and how someone can benefit. We're going to end up having other episodes about the tech side and more specifically, about maybe even the history of solar and that type of thing. But right now, what comes to mind is just the money saving aspect that everyone needs to be thinking about, in addition to the fact that you're helping the environment. Right now, where we are in the world, we need to be thinking about those two things. How do we bring more money, spendable money back to our wallets? And then how do we do it in a way that's good for others and good for ourselves and good for our children, like you mentioned? So that's why I've always been interested in solar. So I'm going to kind of go over to the one tip, one place that I always do for JCooperTravels. And I want us to talk about the place, but and when we talk about the place, I want us to talk about your view and understanding of how solar is being used in other parts of the world. I think it's interesting as we travel, when I went to Tanzania, I guess it must've been about 7-8 years ago when my daughter was over there. That was when I first saw solar panels. And I was thinking to myself, how awesome. Because as I was doing safaris through the parks, I was thinking it would be a disaster to run wires through these parks and destroy the habitat of, the wild animals. And I saw the solar and I thought, that just makes sense. Everyone needs electricity. And also I've seen that solar sometimes can generate, water and things like that. So it's I've always been fascinated with technology, but who wants to hop in first to talk about like the location and then maybe a tip? Again, let's, wrap it around the solar sites. So that's our topic of the day.
Yeah, I can join. It's funny that you mentioned you were there, Jacqui. You never brought that up because we went to Zanzibar on vacation recently.
Yeah.
That was fantastic. That was yeah, I mean, it's interesting here. Solar is definitely a hot item. Even our landlord here asked about it recently for commercial property because they have all these intermittent, the whole plaza loses power for 5 days at a time. Different dynamic here. We had blackouts or brownouts as well in Texas and other parts of the US.
Mm-hmm.
But people don't understand, as a bird's eye view, it speaks briefly to what you were saying earlier, panel costs have gone down 90% in the last 10 years. Okay, and the curve is flattening. So you're not going to get much more gains. Most of that value has been baked into the pie. If anything, the demand for solar will probably increase the cost of hardware because there's supply constraints as well. But there's also all these utilities that are under pressure in the US and here as well, because you have blackouts and brownouts. There's more people using energy during the day. They're working from home. There's people from coming to different states, transplants, and they're putting more pressure on the grid. So the utility companies are under pressure to bleed off that pressure, under political pressure, to make sure they can continue to deliver the service. So they give very big incentives to adopt. So that's changed. You have very good deals where they'll buy back the power at a super high retail rate. You get the lower cost of hardware. The panels now last 40, 45 years, and they only go down to 92% efficiency. They don't lose very much. That's different because you asked that earlier. I don't think that was answered. So because of that, you'll see it even in places like here, which don't have the buyback. I asked somebody, does the utility company buy back the power? They laughed at me. They said, no way, not going to happen. That changed the value so much, but they're still doing it here. And I found that very interesting so it means the costs are cheap enough, including inflation going up, you're losing that value, but if you buy your panels, you fix it at today's cost basis. So that factor plus the panels getting more efficient and the cost of panels going down are making it viable in places where there isn't a 26% tax credit. There isn't the buyback incentives of the utility. So that's fascinating to me that if it's happening here, we have all those advantages in the US that make it even more compelling a value proposition as to answer your question, why now? But I have people asking me all the time. There's people asking me here locally, hey, you're in solar. How do I get panels here for my friend in Zimbabwe? Or how do I do this and that? As I don't know, but they're asking me. There's a lot of interest in it. And again, it's like in an environment where we don't have all the luxury and advantages of the US and all the incentives that are being put forth. So I find that a major screaming indicator of that the baseline value is enough. Combine that with the other factors, I just urge you to do your research and sit in for a presentation because someone over $200 a month will save an average of $50,000 to $100,000 over the life of the system. And we can also do a 30-year warranty, which is an indicator that they're lasting longer. Some people say, I don't believe it. I heard they're only 20 years. Oh yeah, well, there's a 30-year all-inclusive warranty. It's actually an insurance product. So that just shows that, that's an indicator that that's the truth. I mean,
I'm going to interrupt you for a second, because I did want you to mention a little bit about that insurance aspect, because I think that is a really great bit of information. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Randy, would you like me to jump in?
Please, yeah.
All right. So, there's a difference between understand manufacturers come and go over our lives. I'm sure we've all bared witness to very large companies going out of business. We can admit that manufacturer warranties are only as good right now as the manufacturer staying in business. It's the same truth to somebody that comes in and does a home improvement project for your home. They can provide you a warranty on a roof, but if they're out of business, really the warranty doesn't really make much of a sense, does it?
No.
The one thing that insurance does is insurance protects the asset regardless of whether or not the manufacturer actually stays in business. So we can all talk about, one company versus another company, one manufacturer versus another manufacturer. We talked earlier about the weight of solar panels. Well, the weight of a family's concerns financially are protecting their assets, and insurance does that. This is an insurance product. This insurance product covers all parts, all labor, everything inclusive, any roof penetration that takes place on the product, and there's no deductible. So the fact is that you think that an average homeowner may live in a home for 30 years? Probably not. We know the statistic to be between 7 and 10 years. So if the average family lives in a home 7 to 10 years, what happens to that insurance should the solar energy still stay on that house rather than that family taking that solar system with them to another house? Well, this insurance is transferable to the next homeowner. So it becomes a really nice way for a homeowner to say, and this brings me to the other valuable proposition, green energy certified appraisers. These are appraisers that actually have a certification in green energy that will actually value somebody's home. They're going to actually look at a home's value and say, you have one amenity versus another amenity. It's going to cost you more if you want to buy a house that has a pool Well, when you have solar energy on your home, think about the next homeowner. They're buying a home without that large expense. As Rand alluded to, it could be in the neighborhood of $100,000 over the life of the system, if not more, because that number is really based over 25 years, not over the 40, 45 years that these panels last. Having that insurance protects the family against any loss. Why? Because even if the insurance company went out of business, you're a lawyer, you understand this statement. The insurance commissioner in every state must back every single insurance policy to make sure that the consumer is protected from the loss of the insurance should the insurance company go out of business, which could happen, right?
I
So
want to
insurance protects
interrupt
the
you for a
system.
quick. I want to interrupt you just for a quick second. I apologize because you're sharing some really important information. Are you able to share the name of the insurance company that is actually, backing the panels and everything else like that with the listeners?
Absolutely. Solar insured, but it is not available to the consumer. It has to be available on a corporate side.
Yeah.
So it's not something that the individual person that has a system in place already can get, because there are very high regards for the installation team. They have to be certified by the insurance company prior to installation. And any work that gets done on a house, should the manufacturer not be in existence, should the panels be outside of warranty, because panels have a 25-year warranty for the most part. There are some companies that are 10, 15, 20. Most today are 25 years. The inverter, which converts this energy from DC, which is made from the sun, into usable energy in our house, AC, has a 12-year warranty most of the time, that inverter component. But wouldn't you like to have the protection for 30 years on all parts? That's the power of insurance. And when you align yourself correctly with our team, which is what Rand and I are alluding to, this is the way that we have really differentiated ourselves in this industry to protect the consumer's interest at best. Truly, sitting on the same side of the table as opposed to across. And that's very consultative. It's a much different approach. And that's really the value of this insurance policy. Please, Rand, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, my understanding is also it's Lloyd's of London that is backing it ultimately. I mean, the state backs it as well, so that's a bit moot. But Lloyd's of London's been around hundreds of years. You probably are familiar with it.
Yeah.
So Lloyd's of London is backing the policy, and then of course it's registered with the state. So every payment is a certain portion goes to the state to put in a fund to protect the consumer. So it's got multiple layers of protection. First of all, Lloyd's of London, bedrock company. Second of all, it goes to the state. The state backs it, and then Solar Insure is a pretty reputable company as well.
I want to just clarify one more thing for the listeners, because you guys are sharing a lot of information. Again, I want to bring it back to what we mentioned at the beginning. There's no upfront cost to a homeowner. There's zero the only bill that they pay is their electric bill, correct?
Actually, Rand, there's two bills that will always take place. One, you're swapping your electric bill for the most part, 100% of it.
Yep.
But there's always going to be a connection charge with the electric company. They will always have a connection charge.
And that's fine. When you look at your electric bill, there's like different taxes and things like that. But go ahead and clarify.
There's a disclaimer I want to share with you too as well. Your system is designed to offset a certain amount of kilowatt hours that take place based on your last year's production. That's why it's important to review the electric bill itself. It actually identifies inside of a bar chart that actually states how much energy the family's home used over the past 12 months. In the event that you decide to have a party every day while having your solar system for 30 days, 60 days, whatever it may be, I mean, God bless you guys, better invite us because we're coming to party. But the truth is that, you may use too much energy that the solar system's not producing. So I want to make sure that this disclaimer is quite clear.
Yeah.
You may actually have an electric bill if you overuse the amount of energy that the solar system is not producing for you.
Okay. And then the other thing I just want to clarify, because this was the question in my mind, is so you have your electric bill from the solar, you have that little bit of the overcharge possibly, but the insurance is built within the monthly of your electric bill. Is there's no additional insurance fee on top of that. Is that correct?
It's built into the contract.
That's exactly right. So, because again, like I have a car payment, I have a car insurance. I just want to clarify that you're not paying an extra insurance bill on top. It's already built in. So, yeah, it's wrapped around. So everyone who's listening, again, I'm looking at this, there'll be information in the blog below. You can, reach out to me. You can reach out to Randy or Rand through the contact information that will be, below for looking at solar. I would ask that everyone at least look at it to say yes or no. You have nothing to lose by getting the information. You have everything to lose if you get the information and then you decide that it's not for you. That's fine. But then you also have to think about, okay, what are the long-term costs to both the planet as well as to your pocketbook? So whether it's with the company that, I'm interviewing right now or a different company, just explore, explore for you and your family and do your research. Like I say, with every product, do your research, but this is something that I've not heard about before. I've not heard about a solar company that's had an insurance product from Lloyd's of London attached to it. And that was one reason why I wanted to kind of bring Rand and Randy on, because I thought that provided me a little bit of a comfort level with the unforeseen. And as a travel agent, I always say get travel insurance because there's unexpected things that will happen. So I'm always, and maybe that's my law background too, I always look at, having insurance as the backup in case something that you're not thinking about happens, because the unforeseeable does. We see what happened with COVID. It was unforeseen. So any last minute thoughts? Because we've been talking for a while. I love our conversation. It was a great conversation. Any last minute thoughts, Randy?
I'm okay. Randy, you want to speak to kind of close things out?
So sure, Rand, I'll be happy to. Thank you.
Fantastic.
Absolutely.
I do want to, Jacqui, thanks for having us. It was great. These fireside chats are fantastic. We don't have the fire in the background, fireplace, but it is just kind of a roundtable discussion on life strategies. I love what you've done branding wise and your concept of evolving travel as a concept of how as you travel through life, what ways to make, what can you find to increase, our ways of engaging with life in a more productive fashion, in a more elegant fashion, and a more thoughtful fashion. So I'm glad you saw that fit into the picture with what we're doing here, and just want to acknowledge you for that and turn the floor over.
Thank you.
And Jacqui, just I'm going to add to that as well. Understanding the dynamics here. We talk about traveling the world. We talk about understanding our financial benefits. And as I recognize inside your podcast and realize that it's really about life evolution, truly the wellness of life, how to experience some of the most important things in life. And we can do this by protecting or mitigating our risks. And we can do this in a variety of different ways: in travel, in finance, in business, and in wellness, as stated in your podcast, your backdrop, excuse me. Mm-hmm. But one of the most interesting things here that you have this opportunity right now, this forum, to me, is that you have the opportunity of blending all of them together. So we all look at pots of money in different ways, right? We can also say, I could save a little here, I can save a little there. I could turn off the lights, save a little money on energy. But true impact here is, imagine taking that extra $3,000 a year that you're saving by not spending it with the utility company, and now contacting you at JCooperTravels and spending the $3,000 on a family vacation yearly for using the same type of electricity, but really generating it differently. Just a really great way of making your life that much of a better place in this world that we all live in and we all evolve in every single day. So thank you so much for having me. Appreciate
Yeah,
it.
no, I appreciate that. These are important topics. And I love the fact that I'm meeting individuals like yourself who are doing good as well as, helping others. So everyone who's listening, definitely like and subscribe to JCooperTravels. And remember, be kind to yourself, be kind to others. We're one world and we're all connected, and have a great day. Thank you so much, everyone.